I'd like to see what he says as it relates to climate change and how that connects to these broader, deeper issues before I pass judgment. But I think religion ought to be about making us better as people and less about things that end up getting into the political realms.
Those on the political right are seen very often as pro-religion, more often than not following the teaching and guidance of leaders such as Pope Francis, leader of the Catholic Church. And there's always been a thinking by Catholics that the Pope carries God's message to earth. So if the Pope is railing against the effects of climate change, and that would then be a message from God, how will those who lean toward religion as a major deciding factor in life feel if they themselves are vehemently against the climate change debate? Think carefully. Have a seat. We're going in. The Midweek News Call kicks into gear. President of the M Network Branding and Strategy, Tom Mosloom, joined by veteran broadcaster, investigative reporter, and the founder of JaneUnchained.com, Jane Velez Mitchell. I thank you both for being here. Hey. And Jane, I'm going to begin with you. Some Catholics say there is no such thing as climate change. The Pope says, yes, there is. How do you reconcile the two?
Yes, because the Pope is a very smart man, and that's why he's so popular. Because he uses his common sense and listens to 97% of the scientific community that says climate change is real and it is man-made. And I'm not talking about fringe people. I went on the internet today and the list of associations, American Association for the Advancement of Science, American Chemical Society, American Geophysical Union, American Medical Association, I mean, the list goes on and on and on. All these institutions saying climate change is real. I think the Republican Party should wake up to this, because you know what's going to be devastated by climate change? Yes, the poor, but also business. How can you have business when you've got floodwaters, when you've got drought, when you've got fires, when you've got extreme heat and extreme cold? They've got to get rid of this short-term thinking.
All good points, but again, it comes down to this reconciliation. So, Tom, I come to you because there are people who say that the Pope is supposed to be carrying the word of God. We need to believe him. So I guess the bigger question here is, should the Pope be involved in a political football?
Well, it's not a political football. I can't think of a place where the rubber meets the road more than God's people taking care of God's creation. I mean, I don't care what you call it. You could call it climate change. You could call it loving the ecology. You could call it stewardship. The fact of the matter remains is that if you believe that God made all this, well, then we should take care of it as he would want us to. So I don't think the Pope is out of bounds at all. In fact, I think Jeb Bush just dug himself a little hole, particularly among Catholics and particularly among Latin Catholics, who he's going to be hard-pressed to woo after statements like that.
But do you think what he said, though, was really going to make a difference when you talk about all the other issues, Tom, that are out there? Certainly climate change is one, but there's immigration. That seems to loom as a bigger issue for Jeb Bush. There's foreign policy. There's so many other things here.
Don't mess with the Pope, don't mess with nuns, period. That's like sort of Latin politics 101, right?
Did you go to Catholic school, young man? Are we talking about...
I have the knuckles to prove it.
That's exactly right. Systematic discipline and the steel ruler. We get it. Okay. Hey, Jane, when it comes down to Jeb Bush, here's something else, because he's going after Hillary Clinton, which we knew he would, but he is now also once again opposing gay marriage. And there's many people, many on the Republican side, who say that they will go against SCOTUS, they will go against anything when it comes down to gay marriage. Is this just a losing proposition in your mind when it comes down to those wanting to be president?
Look, I agree with your other guests that Jeb Bush is digging himself one hole after the other. Now, he was speaking out of both sides of mouths. He said, I don't believe in gay marriage. I believe in traditional marriage, and I hope the Supreme Court goes with traditional marriage. But I don't want to discriminate against gays. Guess what? Not allowing people to marry, people like me, I'm a lesbian, not allowing me to marry is the biggest discrimination you can exert against me, saying I can't marry the person that I love. So you can't have it both ways, Mr. Bush. If you don't support gay marriage, don't go around and say, but I don't believe in discriminating against gays. He's trying to have his cake and eat it, and he's going to have neither.
Let me ask you this then, Jane. Do you believe that any candidate, Democratic, Republican, makes no difference, whomever it is, if they are not in favor of gay marriage, do you think they can win the presidency?
I don't think you can litmus test on one issue. Certainly, I would hope Republicans and conservatives who believe in the philosophy of don't tread on me, don't infringe on my right to do what I want and pursue my happiness in life as long as I don't hurt you or anybody else. That is the conservative mantra. That's why I don't understand why there's so many conservatives against gay marriage. Now, the states that have passed gay marriage, what horrible things have happened there? Floor sales have gone up. I mean, you've got to look at the impact, and there is no impact. Why don't people just allow other people to engage in their own private, consenting adult behavior without interfering?
All right, I'm going to go ahead and switch to something else here, Tom, to you now. And this comes down to Senate torture. The U.S. Senate voted overwhelmingly on Tuesday to outlaw all future use.
Hang on a second. Why does Jane get to talk about love and marriage, and I get to talk about
simply because of time, my friend? But I tell you what, you go right ahead. I'm going to go ahead and give you that opportunity. Go right ahead. Weigh in.
Listen, I'm going to weigh in because I think that you missed the middle point.
Okay.
This has been a political football that says you have to take one side or the other, and I think there's a large group of people who just don't care. We don't care about gay marriage. We don't know why the government is in the marriage business anyway. Get out of the marriage business. Let the church sort that out. The rest of us will sit on the sidelines.
I feel as myself that I have been immediately taken to task here. I apologize, Mr. Muslim. I will not do anything so egregious again to leave you out of something. I was simply looking at time. And you know something?
Now let's talk about torture.
Simply because of that, I'm taking the story that I had right here, I'm tossing it up, and that's it. I'm getting rid of that one, and I'm moving on to the next one here. Let's go on to Rachel Dolezal. Now you wanted something with a little fire. I'll give you this one, Tom. Here we go. This is the lady who says, I identify as black. Wait a minute now. Hold on. Let's all just stop and pull down a moment here in the couple of minutes we have left. The woman is an absolute liar, and yet there are people who are buying into the lies. Look, this isn't about black or white, Tom. This is about somebody who seemed to want to job the system and take advantage of it to many people. This is a con artist, yes or no?
Yes, I live in a community. I do a lot of business in this community. Part of the government system in this community says that the municipality has to give 51% of its contracts to minority groups. I'm feeling minority today.
I'm
feeling a little minority.
I know that you do want to tell us that in actuality, you are not a dark-haired man. You are actually a chartreuse creature of some kind here.
Listen,
I know that's what you identify with. Jane,
I will tweet this.
Jane,
I will tweet this now.
Please do. Jane, this is interesting here because, again, we're coming down to all this identity issue, and I understand that people should be allowed to be whatever they want to be, but isn't this just a liar working the system?
Well, I think with friends like this, who needs enemies? She says she's a friend to the African-American community, and yet she sued Howard University, the historically black college, for discrimination. And now we're learning about this dust-up with her ex-husband, where she's accusing him, he happens to be African-American, of all sorts of horrific things. The woman has a history of lying. You know, there's some nuggets of good thought. This idea that identity of all sorts is a very amorphous thing that could be a subject for discussion, but she is absolutely the worst vehicle to bring that message.
And do we need to basically say this to both of you? I only got about 45 seconds left, but we need to just go ahead and bury this because, Jane, don't we know that sooner or later the reality show and the sex tape are going to show up? As a matter of fact, there's already a report out there that says she has a sex tape out there. That's it. We've already heard this. She says she was forced to do a sex tape years ago by her ex-husband. That one is now coming out. Her pictures are all over. Tom, I can only imagine where we're going to go with this on branding because, hey, look, if certain people can get away with reality shows, don't you know that somebody's going to sign her up real soon?
Yeah, but that's going to be a train wreck. I mean, that's going to be like Honey Boo Boo.
What, like that's going to stop people from watching?
No, that's why they're going to watch. They're going to watch in droves. Are you kidding me? It's pathetic. It's horrific.
Wait a minute. I got an idea. Let's put the Housewives, the Kardashians, Honey Boo Boo, and Rachel Dolezal together into the same. We got a winner here. We're making a fortune. Tom Muslim, Jane Velez-Mitchell, always a pleasure to have you on the show because I always know I'm getting the straight dirt. Take care, everybody. Talk to you soon. Coming up next, the missiles of June, the one that Putin wants to fire at the West. Next.
He's trying to reclaim the glory of the Soviet Empire, and that includes trying to annex Crimea, Ukraine, Baltic states, also a step up in their nuclear arsenal. And John, actually, we have nuclear, these Russian subs now off the coast of the United States. After the Cold War, they left, but under Mr. Putin's regime, they're now back.
Far too often when the topic of the bare-chested dictator crops up, we speak of Vladimir Putin as perhaps being crazy but not stupid. His latest move in threatening to bring up the Russian nuclear-tipped missiles along the border may be changing minds quickly. Our guest is a seasoned political and military commentator, having served his nation proudly in the Army and as an advisor to then-General David Petraeus. Also author of the book, Government is the Problem. Let's welcome Colonel Patrick Murray into the discussion. Colonel, it's always a pleasure to get a chance to talk to you, and now let's go ahead and talk about the real problems. Putin adding over 40 new ICBMs this year alone that are capable of piercing any missile defenses. Is this just saber-rattling, or do we really need to be concerned?
Well, this is part of a bigger program that they have of upgrading all of their military capacity. They did 36. They tell us that they had 36 new ICBMs last year, and this year another 40. But I do think this current statement by Putin is in response to what we're doing with the Balkans or the Baltic states, as well as Poland, which is to pre-position some heavy equipment there, and that's all in response to what they're doing in Ukraine.
Is there just the, and again, we're always talking about possibles in a situation like this, but is it possible that Putin is going to push himself to a point where he is just going to be unable to do anything more than to push a button and fire a missile?
Well, Putin wants to get the band back together. There's no question about that. And there's a 25% Russian diaspora in Estonia and Latvia. And they're really good. They did this in Ukraine and in Crimea. They're really good at stirring the pot so some Russian nationals in there have some injuries or get attacked, and then they say, well, we have to go in and defend them. And so that's my concern, especially in Estonia and Latvia.
So we have one issue there, and let's go ahead now and turn to the issue in the Middle East, certainly, which is still capturing a lot of attention. I want to get down to this lily pad strategy that we are always talking about when it comes down to defeating different forces. It's been used before. It's nothing really new, but now they're talking about using it in Iraq to defeat ISIS there. Lily pads are basically, again, if I'm not correct, they're just bases, places that you can move from place to place to place, and you're basically creating a strategy to encircle people and have all your equipment and your personnel ready, correct?
Well, that's the concept that they have with lily pads, and I think they base it off of what we did in Anbar back in 2007 with FOBs, forward operating bases. But the key term with a FOB is operating. These guys are non-combatants, and so they're going to be out there. They're very close to Ramadi. They're at Taqadum Air Base, which is not far away, and we know ISIS now controls Ramadi. And I don't like this strategy. I worry that we're going to pay a price for this.
What would that price be? Would it be overconfidence, perhaps?
No, I think the price is American lives. You're going to have 450 non-combatant soldiers in this air base, and ISIS has rockets, ISIS has mortars. You have to resupply these lily pads, which means you either put trucks on the ground and they're vulnerable to IEDs, or if you try to resupply them by air, ISIS has ground-to-air missiles. So I worry what happens with our soldiers over there who are in a non-combatant role. And I will tell you this, they would much rather have the capacity to do some offensive operations were they equipped properly.
Okay, there it is, the next point. Instead of doing this lily pad strategy, would we then, in your opinion, be better off if simply stated, we put in the full-time bases, we put in the full-time troops? Some are going to call it an occupying force, but there is no way, some would say, for us to win this war, which is what you have to do when you go to war. You got to win, unless you put the people there, arm them, and put them to work full-time.
Well, that's the straw man that we hear a lot from the White House, is that, well, we're not going to put another 150,000 troops back in. Nobody's asking for that. I think a great solution, things that worked really well in Afghanistan, are as you embed some special operations forces with the Iraqi security forces. You give them the ability to do some forward air controlling so that we have some serious air power that comes in. I mean, we've got, what, 10 or 12 sorties a day? ISIS is out holding victory parades after Ramadi. Do you think they have any concerns about what we're doing from the air? We have 10 or 12 sorties a day, and there's no indication that they're even dropping their munitions because we don't have any forward air controllers. We should be doing 500 sorties a day if we want to degrade ISIS.
Okay, now I got a minute left here, and to your point then, let's talk about the leader of al-Qaeda's affiliate in Yemen was killed last week by a missile fired from a CIA drone. So you have the White House and others talking about these decapitation strikes that are killing these leaders. But don't we need to just go back and say, you can't kill one cockroach and expect a whole 1,000 more just to show up? One doesn't do it here, yes?
That's right. Look, it's great when we whack one of these bloodthirsty troglodytes. I couldn't be happier. But in terms of a strategy unto itself, Al-Qaeda is very diverse. There are a lot of junior troglodytes that are just ready to take charge as soon as somebody else goes away. And that's what we see. And that's been the case for years and years and years. We need a more all-encompassing strategy other than just decapitation.
And I notice full well that you chuckled as well as everybody does when I use the term cockroaches. But hey, if it fits, you got to go ahead and use it with what we're fighting right here. Colonel Patrick Murray, always a pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Great pleasure. Thank you.
All right, take care. Now it's up to you. You are in the Oval Office, you the viewers. How would you plan to handle Vladimir Putin? Let's go back to that first of all, because we've all talked about Iraq, Iran, the Middle East, but how would you handle the bare-chested dictator? Tell us your plan. Go to Newsmax.com/comments. Tell us exactly, don't just give us a quick word or two, tell us exactly how you would deal with Vladimir Putin. Coming up next, we'll deal with your money as we continue right here on the only program that questions everything. This is MidPoint.
Hello, I'm Miranda Kahn here with your Newsmax Now update. A judge in Colorado dismisses a fifth juror in the movie theater massacre trial. The judge decided to remove the juror after she admitted to recognizing one of the survivors. That leaves a panel to now 19 jurors. James Holm faces charges of opening fire during a Batman film 3 years ago, killing 12 people and injuring dozens more. An attorney for Joyce Mitchell, the prison worker accused of helping those two killers escape from a New York prison, says she's remorseful.
As I said, she's distraught. She's very upset. She's very weepy and very upset.
The manhunt for Richard Matt and David Sweat, seen here, is now in its 12th day. FBI agents in New York arrest a man in Staten Island for possible links to ISIS. An FBI spokeswoman declined, however, to comment on reports that the suspect tried to attack agents with a knife. And the FCC fines AT&T $100 million. The decision was made today after regulators accused the wireless carrier of misleading customers. They claim AT&T purposely slowed down customers' data speeds. But AT&T says it will dispute those claims. That was your very latest Newsmax Now update. Remember to always stay connected with us at Newsmax.com.
Greece has become the symbol of fiscal trepidation, but with the country's exit from the EU shatter the union. Americans are rediscovering their feelings about free trade. China and Australia sign a big deal of their own, and the next time a certain data carrier tells you they would never slow down your feed, you have 100 million reasons to call them liars. All right, let's get to it. Check your wallet. The Money Master, editor for the Financial Intelligence Report here at Newsmax, Jeff Yasteen, joins us here on MidPoint. Jeff, looks like from Wall Street today, not too bad, up slightly.
Yeah, the market was down early in the day, and then we haven't mentioned the Fed for 2 or 3 days now, and I wasn't here last week. Well, the Fed wrapped up their June meeting. This is the Federal Open Markets Committee, and no surprise, they did not announce any sort of rate increase. But there was a relief rally, so the market moved up to about for the Dow's up about 90 points, and then finished higher, up 31. That was basically the middle point of its range. S&P up 4, NASDAQ up 9. And the key thing out of this Fed meeting, Ed, is that they do a survey of all the other members in the room, and it's put into a little data plot. They call it the dot plot. And according to that dot plot, the Fed is signaling here that they will raise rates at least once, and according to the other members in the room, think the Fed might raise rates twice before the year is out, and 5 times next year. Now that's just today based on data for the last couple of months. We'll see what happens at the July meeting, but that's what the Fed is saying so far coming out of this meeting, wrapping up today.
All right, I got about 90 seconds left. Three things I want to get a quick comment from you. The New York Times says the Greek exit would shake but most likely not shatter the Eurozone. You agree or disagree?
I agree. You know, the banks, investors, anybody else with interests in Greece has had, what, 2, 3, 4 years now to prepare for this Grexit, which I still don't think it's going to happen. And anything that's been talked about this much for this long generally is not going to rock the markets as much as the headlines might otherwise indicate.
Australia and China sign a history-making free trade agreement after a decade of negotiations. How will this affect America, if at all?
Not much impact, except that, you know, with the Trans-Pacific Partnership on the rocks, this just shows how China is pulling Australia more into its orbit. The other key thing I thought was interesting, in that agreement they signed, if an infrastructure project is more than $150 million in cost, it gives China the ability to put its own workers, Chinese workers, into Australia to work on that project. I find that somewhat disturbing. I think other people would too.
All right, and just want to make a mention of this. We can't get into it, but the FCC fining AT&T $100 million for misleading customers about throttled unlimited data plans. Gee, what a shock. There's 100 million reasons to go after them next time. Don't forget, go to Newsmax.com, click on the Finance tab. Jeff Yasteen and the team are there 24/7 to let you know what's happening in business. Jeff, pleasure, my friend. We'll see you tomorrow. Maybe we'll talk Fed.
Thanks, Ed.
All right, coming up next, the first black North Carolina GOP chairman wants to change direction of the party, knowing that is what is necessary if the GOP wants to succeed there and nationally. Next on MidPoint.
First and foremost, I appreciate you. Thank you for your votes. And thank you for your support. I have one thing to say. We will win in 2016!
There is no escaping the perception some have of the Republican Party. A doddering and aging band of white guys holding a distinct disdain for anyone of color and merely paying lip service to racial issues if it doesn't fit their agenda. Talk to those of a more modern stripe in the GOP, however, and they will fire back telling you it's all drivel. And it's up to them to change that perception into what the party must become in order to win back the White House and lead America at the local level. Our guest is one determined to be a leader in that discussion. He is the new chair of the North Carolina GOP and the first African-American to hold that position. Welcome Hassan Hardnett to MidPoint. Chairman, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me on.
It is a pleasure. Do you feel as if you're a trailblazer?
Yes, I feel like I am trailblazing and leading the way for North Carolina, absolutely.
When it comes down to that perception, you would agree with me that that is a perception that still sits out there, and there are still people on the left who will drive that home every single day. What is it then to you and to those you will lead that are charged with now in changing that perception?
Well, for us, it's about doing the right things long enough consistently and just having the right attitude.
And what is that attitude?
The attitude is Republicans do care. We care about our state. We care about our families and our businesses, and making sure that we have an environment where we all can grow.
But you were a Democrat at one point. Tell us about that change, because I think I read somewhere where you said that at one time in your life you checked off Democrat simply because that's what African Americans always did.
Correct. When I had moved into the state, I knew I needed to register as a voter, and I checked off that box and had a conversation with a man by the name of Tim Johnson some years later, and he inspired me to becoming the Republican I am today. He talked about the power of limited government, and as well as having a strong family. And so after those kind of conversations, I realized that I was part of the wrong party.
How important, I want to go back to that, the wrong party. How do you then take what you've learned and how do you then push that forward for everybody, not just African Americans, but for everybody, to make them understand that the Republican Party is the party for the future and is the necessary party in order to move forward for this country?
Well, it comes down to education and having open conversations. And so people want to know, are you listening and are you able to articulate answers to their questions? And one of the things that I've done successfully is take both platforms, the Democratic platform as well as the Republican platform, wide out both words and ask that individual to read these two platforms and make a decision as to which one best represents them. And 9 times out of 10, they choose Republican.
You are 39 years of age. You're a young guy in politics. There's a need in this country, many people would say, to get not just the 39-year-olds, but the 29-year-olds, the 19-year-olds, men and women of all color, to be interested in politics and to understand that it's not boring. How do you push that one forward?
Well, it all comes down to messaging, being able to relate to people where exactly they are, and if someone's a college student, having a message that resonates in the college student land. If they are a family, having a message that resonates with family. And so the Republican Party is the right party, and we have the right message, we have the right platform, and I believe this is how we will be able to make an impact to citizens all across the state.
Do you feel as if you've already made that impact? Obviously, you're the chairman of the GOP in North Carolina, but have you won everybody over, or do you still feel as if you still need, as a young guy, to win a lot of those older, established individuals over?
We are united. It's amazing the amount of energy that I'm receiving from people and individuals all across the state. And so this is a wonderful time, and we are all excited to make sure that we are doing the right things.
And when you do those right things, it would seem to many people that the left has certain facets of the media in their pocket, not only in North Carolina, but nationally as well. Do you need to go after those? Do you need to attack those with the right message?
Well, for us, it's all about making sure we're building relationships. And people who work in media, they are individuals as well.
So I have to ask you, I only got a couple of seconds left, but I know you're from New England. I would imagine then that you are a Red Sox fan, just to go ahead and get that out of the way.
Yes.
Which has got to be difficult in North Carolina. That's okay. And besides that, well, if you're a Patriots fan, you're in even bigger trouble in North Carolina, but you got to be very careful when you do that. Chairman, listen, this has been a pleasure just to get a chance to know you and get a chance to make contact with you. What you've done is historic. You're pushing the message forward about the Republicans, trying to make sure that the right message gets out there. I hope we have a chance, and let's make sure we talk again. Let's see how things are doing in North Carolina. We wish you a lot of luck.
I appreciate that. Have a wonderful day.
It is my pleasure. You too. Always good to see young people. Younger, 39? Wow. Just becomes older. I feel so much older. But it makes sense. Get them involved in the political process. Stay tuned. MidPoint continues.
The FBI and Justice Department say they have discovered evidence that front office officials for the Cardinals, reportedly using old passwords, hacked into the computer network of the rival Houston Astros, whose general manager Jeff Lunau used to work for the Cardinals, possibly accessing closely guarded player and scouting information.
The St. Louis Cardinals are considered one of the squeakiest of squeaky clean American baseball franchises. But the federal government may lay waste to generations of good tidings by charging team executives with, in essence, stealing information from a rival club. And you better believe MLB execs are keeping their heads down on this one for the time being. Plenty more to dig into. Let's step to the plate with the man who invented the concept of sports business commentary, attorney and the sports professor, Rick Haro. How's it going, Professor?
Other than being stuck in traffic in New York, things are going well. How do we always get these juicy issues to talk about, my friend?
Yes, I do, but that's the reason why we call you, because this one actually, well, let's be real honest here when we come down to hacking. They didn't actually hack. They had an old password that they tried again, but let's again be honest. You can't be very intelligent when you do this from your home, as these people apparently did, so that they were easily traceable by the federal government. This is pretty harsh.
Well, the real issue here is, I guess as always, and I'm not going to suggest it's an accident. I'm going to suggest that the facts allowed kind of an easy pickings, and there was a kind of a messy situation with an employee that didn't clean out his old email account. I will tell you this. I spent time with the Commissioner of Baseball, Rob Manfred, at a DP conference yesterday, and he is absolutely committed to making sure that the game stays above reproach and integrity on the field. And so he's a lawyer, he's a linear thinker. You know what, I think a lawyer's in a position like this where they're hand. But the bottom line is you need to be restrained, you need to be very careful. But it's a parallel track here, as we have in so many of these situations. You got the criminal / FBI investigation on the one hand, and what baseball is going to do on the other.
Would this be considered, and of course the hyperbole machine is running heavy on this right now, but would this be considered one of the worst cases of cheating in sports history, at least in current sports history? People are already saying that you can punish Pete Rose all you want, but that's not even close to what this is.
Well, if we found out that the computer had instructions on how to deflate a baseball, then we'd really be combining. How about
Hang
that?
tight, don't worry about it. We're going to get to that momentarily. Finish.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I know how you operate. But the bottom line of all of this is that this is one of those situations where one thing the team holds dear is proprietary information on players. And so there's a way to level the playing field is to make sure that only the smart survive and figure out exactly how to maneuver it one way or another. So, again, we haven't got to the bottom of all of this, but that is one of those things that really, really seriously factors into consideration here.
Regardless of what happens here, do you think this stains the St. Louis Cardinals' image?
Well, if it's a one-off isolated incident, then I guess you can argue that the Cardinals will survive and thrive and rise above that. The Cardinals have been one of the best teams in baseball for a long time, the best image in baseball for a long time. Their impact on what they do in St. Louis is huge as far as the stadium and charity and all of that. And so let's wait a week or two before we answer that question. I guarantee you ask me that next week, we'll have a better answer because we'll know a lot more.
Okay, I'll do that. 2 minutes to go here. There is a study out that may have some reprieve for New England Patriots quarterback Tom Brady as he gets ready to appeal the suspension for Deflategate. Before we get your opinion, here's what comedian Bill Burr had to say about it on Real Time with Bill Maher.
That is the most ridiculous non-controversy ever. They weighed the ball. Who does that? It was lighter. What was the Colts' disadvantage? They played with the ball that they played with all year long. Our defense didn't seem to have a problem catching it.
Right.
Well, I'll tell you what, Rick. Here's a study from Kevin Hassett, Director of Economic Studies, Stan Vuger, who's a resident scholar at the American Enterprise Institute. It's in the New York Times, and they basically found that the Wells report was flawed, deeply flawed was how they were putting it here. So they're saying that if you base this on the Wells report, you've got to find Brady innocent. What do you think?
Well, it's hard to say one study of 200 pages and then another one says the other one's flawed. And having not read the one that says the one is flawed, it's kind of hard for me to pass judgment on whether it's flawed.
Well, what they're saying is, just so you know real quick, what they're saying is that it didn't prove misconduct. The first is the Patriots' balls declined too much. The second, overlooked by the Wells report, is that the Colts' balls declined too little. So once again, we're coming down to this whole PSI issue here, no matter how you slice it.
Yeah, we're coming down to science.
Yes.
And we're coming down to human interpretation of science, which is always kind of dangerous. And then political, high visibility, competitive human interpretation of science. And when you add all that together, you've got issues that cause you to stay up all night, which I'm very happy for.
Which I thought you would. Just 10 seconds. Do you think that Brady will still get hit with the 4 games?
I think I'll get hit with some, but there's an appeal process, and it may make sense. New facts, new circumstances means new punishment. Can't guarantee it, but it's happened before.
By the way, are you near Gray's Papaya in Manhattan by any chance?
No, I'm slowly creeping up on JFK, and maybe I'll get there before midnight.
Oh, okay, good. Well, we'll see you then in August if you're creeping up to JFK. You and I both know that.
Yeah. With any luck, I'll see you next week.
Professor, drive and fly safe. We'll talk to you soon. Take care.
Amen.
All right, coming up next, the French gift that keeps on giving to America, seen in a very different light. Our light, that is, if you will. MidPoint continues. All right, now she has been host of political rallies and protests, appearing in numerous films, even more photographs, and she has welcomed millions of admirers to her home. It's America. 130 years ago today, the Statue of Liberty sailed into New York Harbor. It arrived in 350 individual pieces and more than 200 crates. So thanks to Eric Furman, it's time to look back at what the Statue of Liberty is and what we see it as, the gift that keeps on giving. Rock on, true believers. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll see you back here Thursday, Friday Eve. We'll get you ready for the weekend as we continue right here on MidPoint.
The Parc Monceau in Paris, where over 100 years ago the sculptor Auguste Bartholdi had a dream. The dream was the famous Statue of Liberty, here under construction. Bartholdi got his idea from the sight of a young girl jumping a barricade with a torch in her hand. His mother was the model for Liberty's face. The chosen site was Bedloe's Island in New York Harbor. Various ideas as the work progressed. The forearm and torch were exhibited in New York and Philadelphia to raise funds, although the basic cost was met by the French. The warship Issair, which in 1884 took the statue, in pieces, to the United States. And the Statue of Liberty as it now stands at the gateway to the New World.
Since 1886, the Statue of Liberty has stood here in New York Harbor. She came as a gift from the people of France to the people of America. But some thought she was a suspicious gift. Some called her a pagan goddess, while others saw her as the perfect symbol of liberty. But what about today? What does the statue symbolize now?
Kind of makes you wonder, doesn't it? Wonder what? Whether she's naked under that toga. She's French. You know that.
Running out of time, Ray. Can't you go any faster? I'm afraid the vibrations will shake her to pieces. You should have patted her feet.
I don't think they make Nikes in her size, Ray.
Oh, don't worry, she's tough. She's a Harbor chick!
Welcome to the Statue of Liberty. The statue is a gift from French citizens and has come to symbolize hope for naked women everywhere. Bocce balls!
Oh, okay, Missy. This ain't California. We don't go for this stuff here. Come on.
Come on, Fry.